Welcome into the 2025 Tracking the Tropics Hurricane Show. We're getting ready for the 2025 season. I'm Chief Meteorologist Donnie Cox.
I'm Storm Track 12 meteorologist Les Still.
And I'm meteorologist Lana Foss.
And I'm Storm Track 12 meteorologist Tyler Van Due.
And of course, as we get ready to head into the season, we always look at several factors that set up how this is supposed to be for this upcoming season. But it's just a model to go by. It's not locked in, but still, we're looking at an above normal season.
Yeah, you got to think globally to be able to forecast locally. So whether it's in the Pacific Ocean with the Magellan Oscillation, or even the Atlantic Ocean with the sea surface temperatures that are running just slightly below average compared to where we were last year. And then we're trying to detail a general how many storms might we see this year.
We're looking at multiple factors. We're looking at the winds, how things are going to play together, and just looking for those ingredients as we get ready for this next tropical season.
And a lot of those ingredients, much like the winds as well as the wind shear, this year they're a little on the lower side, which means we could see these storms stick around a little bit instead of being pushed off. And we are in a very neutral ENC season, which also does help those storms stick around and fester just a little while in the Atlantic.
Yeah, another difference we're looking at this year is the Atlantic waters are actually slightly cooler than what we saw last year, but they're still running at or above average, which therefore leads to our above average forecast.
We've had a pretty good amount of rainfall. We had that drought to start out early, but I think we're going to make up for it in terms of rainfall as we step into this tropical season.
Typically when you get a cold shot in May, like we've been experiencing here, usually there within the first couple weeks of June, that's when you start looking for something coming out of either the Gulf or down in the Caribbean. It doesn't look like we're going to be looking at anything really coming up the East Coast, probably until we get late June into July.
And I know last year we had more of a late start as far as the season goes, and we were more active at the very end, but this year we do have that possibility to kind of reverse that and be more active at the start of the season.
And either way, it looks like that we will be above normal with 13 to 19 storms or named storms, and 6 to 10 could be hurricane potential. And of course, major hurricanes anywhere from 3 to 6. Of course, the normal of that is 3. Last year we had 5 of them. So again, we're going to be a little above where we would expect to be, but this is going to be something we'll be keeping an eye on early all the way through the season.
And the big thing is, don't just get caught up on the numbers. Andrew in 92 was the only storm to make landfall, and that tore up South Florida. It only takes one, so now it's the time to start preparing.
As we get ready for the hurricane season, we are bringing it on the road. We are at the newly constructed fishing pier that is near the Circle in downtown New Bern. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to use this new pier here. But of course, being near the water, that wants to remind us that this is an area where we saw Florence headed underwater. In fact, way behind us, it was high surge.
10.5-foot storm surge we took into downtown New Bern.
And of course, that is something that we want to talk about, and that is the surge. That's always important. Remember, wind doesn't kill people. It's water most of the time. 85% of the time, water is what kills people from tropical systems.
It's not a huge wave that you would see in the distance. The water starts to inundate low-lying areas near the water. It can come up quickly, rising many feet in a couple minutes. But again, it's not that huge wave that you would see in the distance that they show in the movies.
And of course, we have a diagram here. And if you take a look at how this actually lays out, you see the house well up into the dry land. But first off, up to 3 feet. 3 feet can do it right down.
3 feet can trap you in your home, and it can sweep your car away. So 3 feet may not seem like a lot, but that's plenty deep to do damage and can be life-threatening.
Of course, you and I, we're a little over 6 feet tall. The water comes up 6 feet. We're talking, if we're standing here and where's our reference behind us, you can see the river. We're on dry land now, but 6 feet, pretty well covers that.
Yeah, that inundates parts of New Bern, which is next to the News River. So 6 feet, usually about the height of a call.
And as you get to the deeper waters, like we had here in the park, just the top of the gazebo were sticking out 10 feet in storm surge. That really becomes catastrophic.
It's hard to imagine the height of a basketball hoop downtown New Bern, but that's a surge value we saw with Florence, 10 huge surge.
So you have to be prepared when it comes to the surge. And again, what you're looking at from the diagram here, it shows you it does come up quickly, and you have to be concerned. Everybody just all that thing.
Have to have that plan in place, and we can have breaking waves on top of that surge. So 6, 8, 10 feet of surge is oppressive, and keep in mind you have breaking waves on top of it causing further damage. So it's very, very important you have that plan to evacuate.
Before the storms hit, a full supply yard is what the electric companies want to have, whether it be transformers or utility poles, so that way as soon as the storm clears, they're able to get the power restored. Electric companies like Carteret Craven Electrical Cooperative have something they call a storm stock. They have a trailer full of storm material specifically for the season. Director of Communications Melissa Glenn says it's a lesson they learned from Hurricane Florence.
When so many utilities were impacted, it was hard to get materials, and so we've kept a storm stock available to us so we can quickly get power back on with those materials that are often impacted during storms.
She says in preparing for a storm, they take precautions to prevent an outage, like moving equipment.
We don't want anything to be in an area that could be flood prone, so we'll take precautions with that. We also stage equipment throughout the service area whenever we're expecting a tropical event. We place things in our substations that might be needed for quick restoration. If it was a major impact, we also have plans in place to stage our crews at various places throughout the service territory so that it's easier for them to get where they need to get to so that we can get power back on.
And while you prepare for the season, one thing you can do right now is bookmark your utility outage map.
Most utilities have systems set up so that we know your power's out before you even know your power's out. So bookmark that information.
It's also good to know how to get in touch with your utility company, whether you experience an outage or you see a downed line. Remember, you should never approach a downed electrical line. Call the electric company or 911 if it's a hazard, so they can address it as quickly as possible.
You know, a lot of people forget a communication plan or strategy in the preparedness kit or getting ready for hurricane season. So cell phones are going to go down after a hurricane, and they might go down for days. How are you going to communicate with your family and loved ones and friends to let them know you're safe? And more importantly, if you have an emergency, how are you going to reach out for help?
And in addition to deciding on a communication plan, it's important to have 72 hours worth of food, water, and supplies in your home. It's also critical to have documents like your social security card and birth certificate in a safe location. And with potential power outages, cash is something good to have on you ahead of time. Another thing Jones County Manager Kyle Smith said you should do as you prepare is
check your generators often. Don't wait until we get a named storm coming our way. Check them monthly. Make sure they're running so that you have means to cook and have power supply for freezers and those types of things for preserved foods.
You know, as the storm comes in, a hurricane is something that can cause lots of problems. Even emergency services may have trouble getting out to you during a storm.
One of the things that we really like to emphasize, especially if you have medical problems or certain medical conditions that might require an emergency care, is that, you know, once winds get up to 50 miles an hour, we can't cross some of these bridges with those ambulances. So we get into situations also where we have to get into a holding pattern, which you could really be making some bad choices.
Stanley Kite is the Emergency Services Director for Craven County. He says another good thing to do once you have your plan in place for you and your family is to make a connection with your neighbors.
We have a lot of people that don't even know who their neighbors are. We ask them to, hey, just do a courtesy check on your neighbor, especially if they're elderly, or if you see that it looks like they're elderly people and might need some assistance. At least have a chat with them, see what their plan is. And if their plan is to shelter in place, make sure they have reached out to other family members that know they're going to be there.
Now that we've checked in with our neighbors, we need to assess the damage on our own properties.
With this upcoming hurricane season, what are a few good plans that people could plan, maybe on a prone to wind area along their house?
Live oaks are very good. They're very hardy. They live a long time. River birch is another one that grows pretty quick, so it can provide some blockage really quick. Southern magnolias is a big favorite around here, being in the south, of course. And those are probably the top three that I would recommend.
Now, as far as like mulch or maybe a type of stone, maybe they should use a type of gravel to put on top of a certain plants. Would you recommend they use mulch, or would that increase the potential for flooding?
Well, the mulch is probably going to lift up and float away. So if you can afford it, rock would be the way to go, because if the rocks move, then you got other things to worry about.
As for insuring your home, this is one thing North Carolina Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey wants you to know.
Homeowners policies does not cover flood damage. We saw that with Hurricane Florence. in the southeastern states in 2018, we had over 100,000 people that filed homeowners insurance claims. They got paid zero because all the damage was flood insurance. So you need to talk to your insurance agent about flood insurance, either through the federal flood insurance program or private flood insurance.
During hurricane season, sometimes you have to evacuate the city that you're in, but what if you can't go to other cities and you have to stay in the area? Places like Jones County has this building behind me, which is the Civic Center. This is one of the shelters this county has, and I took a look into what went into making this a shelter and how to keep you safe during hurricane season.
The Civic Center is able to withstand up to Category 2 or 3 wind speeds.
That's Jones County Health Director Adrienne Smith. She says county planners chose the Civic Center as a shelter option because it was the most central location in the county. It also can hold a lot of people. Some shelters across Eastern Carolina allow pets. You'll just have to double check ahead of time. She says most shelters will provide food and water.
We will also provide cots and blankets for you. So nobody needs to bring any sort of blanket unless it's for comfort. We do encourage people to bring pillows if it makes them more comfortable.
And if someone is unable to get to this particular location,
so if they're not able to get here into Trenton, what we would do is direct them to another county shelter, whether it's Onslow or Lenoir or Craven or Carteret.
When a storm comes in, many people are given evacuation orders. It's very important that you follow those evacuation orders, but even though you may have a differing idea of when you need to leave, just make sure you plan early.
Patience goes a long ways and goes without saying. Also, there's other things that you can do prior to the evacuation and getting on the roadway, which is making sure your vehicle is ready to go, that you're topped off with a full tank of gas. That way you're not becoming disabled because you ran out of fuel and causing more congestion on the roadway.
And here's another thing that Master Trooper Rico Stevens wants you to know. If you're involved in an accident while evacuating, if you're able, move your car off to the side of the road onto the shoulder. And this will allow the traffic to continue to flow on the evacuation route. Also, lots of times we will have an evacuation route where water becomes a problem and they put up barricades to block you from coming down those roads.
Those barriers are there to keep you safe and to keep you out of harm's way. And it's also to free up manpower and other resources so where we don't have to put someone, an actual person or fireman or a trooper there manning that intersection or that road blocking it off. And what that barricade does, that allows us to redeploy that member somewhere else where they're needed.
And when it comes to mortality, according to Jamie Rome, who is the Deputy Director of the National Hurricane Center, direct deaths from wind have been declining in the last several decades. He says that's due to advances in warnings and communications. So people are not dying from the wind as much so as other hazards.
If you look at a mortality, the vast majority of deaths from hurricanes are from water, most of which inland flooding. And then after that, rip currents, and then after that, storm surge. But if you put all of that together, more than 3 out of 4 fatalities come at the hand of water.
And storm surge is something to take into consideration as you prepare for an approaching storm. For example, Hurricane Florence, we saw the storm surge.
Florence is a classic case of how the storm size or how big it is or how wide it is across is in many cases, especially in Eastern North Carolina, as important or more important than intensity. And that really catches people off guard. The storm size in some parts of the country is more important than intensity when it comes to storm surge.
Hurricane Florence made landfall in September of 2018. The storm produced record-breaking rainfall across eastern North Carolina, forcing our team to do this.
And it is continuing to curve a little bit. As we told you earlier, we had to evacuate our building, and now we're being told that our sister station in Myrtle Beach is going to continue our coverage so that we can continue the evacuation of this building because of the rising water. So we're going to take you now to the coverage from our sister station in Myrtle Beach.
Leaving only the radar of Florence looping on repeat. Years later, we're still dealing with the lasting impacts from the storm. You've heard how Florence shifted storm preparations across the area, But here in eastern North Carolina, we expect tropical storms and hurricanes. As for the western part of the state, the idea of a hurricane hitting that area is nearly incomprehensible.
Hands down the worst natural disaster, really the only natural disaster that I personally experienced while in the business.
That's Jason Boyer. He's the chief meteorologist at WLOS, our sister station in Asheville. The TV station lost power, but the backup generators kicked in. He said when a storm as devastating as Helene hits, it really changes your whole idea of how you approach messaging and getting the word out to people.
Yeah, once power started going out, we really tried to utilize social media as much as possible. However, we had a double whammy. We had power loss pretty much area wide.
This storm is far from over. Historic flooding, high winds, and more heavy rain are expected as Helene makes its way to the mountains. This morning had a bit of a power blip right there. But once again, historic flooding, high winds, heavy rains expected as Helene continues to make its way into the mountains.
And we had cell phone loss area wide. And that not only handicapped us from getting messaging out, but handicapped the emergency responders.
He shared with me the domino effect that nobody could have foreseen happening, and how even with power surges, it was critical to get the updates out to the community.
I didn't know who was listening. I couldn't even tell you if I was reaching anybody because we just kept hearing about all the power outages at least. And you just have to keep going like somebody is obviously watching. You can't just give up and say, we're done. We're just going to have to rely on, people hearing it from word of mouth, or you can't do that. So we were playing it as if we had our audience still, even though we probably lost 90% plus of it.
And their coverage not only reached people in the area, but caught the attention of national and even international viewers.
We were told retrospectively that people from out of the state and internationally were actually watching us, which was something that we, never thought in the back of our minds. We were thinking trying to get the local impacts out to the people living here. But I was told by my family and other people that have since come and gone, and they said, look, we were watching you guys because you were the only source of the immediate information at ground zero what was going on. So they were watching from somewhere else.
He said in the future, he hopes everyone listens to the early messaging and that everyone grasps the situation, especially when it's a life-threatening situation such as Helene.
Making people realize that no matter what your mind is trying to tell you, it's probably a good idea to err on the side of caution no matter what, and leave or prepare for the flooding and just be ready for loss of power, an extensive loss of power or possible loss of water too.
He said it's a learning experience from not only the public standpoint, but from the standpoint of the meteorologists as scientists.
And the thing is like people ask me all the time, did you really think it was going to be this bad? And the answer is no. I mean, I'm being honest with them. No, we could not have imagined that we were going to be without power for months on end in places, or that the water system, Asheville's water system, a population of 100,000 people, would lose drinkable water for a month or more than that. It was like a month or more before anything was usable.
And we thank you for joining us for the 2025 Tracking the Tropics Hurricane Show. We'll be here all year long to track and alert to severe weather.
And remember, we're available whenever you need that weather information, whether it's on air, online, or our various digital social platforms.
And you can guarantee that the Storm Track 12 team will provide you the latest update on tracking the tropics, that hour-by-hour forecast.
Yeah, we're always active on social media, and if you need to go find any of our hurricane content, you can go and find it on YouTube. We'll have it there all season long.
And of course, grab that NOAA weather radio. Very important because you could actually lose power to some of the cell towers, but the NOAA weather radio has a weather backup or a battery backup that gets that weather information to you instantly during the season. Thanks for watching Tracking the Tropics.